Elias Monroe woke to the sound of a machine counting his breaths like it was keeping score. The room smelled of cleaning liquid and old sheets. Light came through a narrow window and rested on the wall, dull and tired. His body felt heavy, like it did not belong to him anymore. He tried to move his fingers. They obeyed, slowly, as if asking permission first. The ceiling had cracks shaped like rivers. Elias had been staring at them for hours, tracing paths that led nowhere. Pain sat deep in his chest, not sharp, but constant. It reminded him that he was still here, even when he wished he wasn't. A nurse passed by the open door without looking in. No one stopped. No one asked how he felt. The small whiteboard across the room listed his name, his age, and nothing else. No visitors, no emergency contact. That part hurt more than the injury. Elias closed his eyes and tried not to think about how he got here. The long nights, the missed meals. It's a job that paid too little and took too much. It's the way his body finally gave up in the middle of a shift, dropping him to the floor while strangers stared. He remembered someone saying, "Call an ambulance," like it was a question, not a command. He opened his eyes again when he heard footsteps stop near the door. He expected a nurse, maybe a doctor. Instead, the room grew quiet in a strange way, like the air itself was paying attention. A man stood at the doorway. He was tall and straight, wearing a gray coat that looked expensive but simple. Shoes were clean. His hair was silver and carefully combed. He didn't rush. He didn't hesitate. He looked like someone who had never waited for permission in his life. The man stepped inside and closed the door behind him. Elias frowned. "Can I help you?" His voice came out rough. The man didn't answer right away. He walked closer to the bed, his eyes moving over Elias' face, the bruising near his temple, the thinness of his arms. Something unreadable passed through his expression. "You look smaller than I remember," the man said. Elias felt his chest tighten. He knew that voice. He had heard it before, but only through phone calls that ended too soon in videos played at family gatherings he was never invited to. "No," Elias said quietly. "That's not possible." The man nodded once. "It is." Elias swallowed. His heart began to race. Victor Monroe. Yes. The name filled the room like a weight. Victor Monroe, his grandfather. The man whose face appeared in magazines. It's the man who owned companies and buildings and entire streets worth of money. The man who left Elias' life without ever saying goodbye. "You're lost," Elias said. "This isn't a private room." Victor looked around. "I know exactly where I am." Elias tried to sit up, then winced as pain shot through his side. Victor noticed and reached out, then stopped himself halfway, his hand hovering in the air like he wasn't sure he was allowed to touch. They stared at each other. Years of silence stretched between them, thick and uncomfortable. "Shouldn't be here," Elias said. Victor pulled a chair closer and sat down. The chair creaked under his weight, loud in the quiet room. "I should have been here a long time ago," Victor said. Elias laughed once, sharp and bitter. "That's funny." Victor didn't smile. "Not joking." Elias turned his head toward the window. Outside, cars moved like tiny toys. Life went on without him. It always had. "What do you want?" Elias asked. Victor folded his hands. "Came to take you with me." Elias turned back, confused. "Take me where?" "Out of here." Victor said, "You're leaving." Elias shook his head. "You don't get to say that. I can't even afford the bill." "They'll keep me until that won't be a problem," Victor said. Elias felt anger rise, hot and fast. "You don't get to fix things now. You don't get to walk in here like nothing happened." Victor's jaw tightened. "I know. Do you?" Elias asked, "Do you know what it's like to sleep in your car? To choose between food and rent? To pretend you're fine when your body is breaking?" Victor's eyes flickered. "I know I wasn't there." "Not knowing," Elias said. Avoiding silence fell again. The machine continued its steady counting. Victor finally stood. He walked to the window and looked out, his back to Elias. "I saw a picture of you," Victor said. 3 days ago?" Elias said nothing. A friend sent it to me, Victor continued. He didn't know who you were. He thought it was someone else. Said the city was getting cruel. Victor turned around. You were on a stretcher. Your face was gray. I didn't recognize you at first. Elias' throat tightened. So that's it? Pity? Victor walked back to the bed. Fear. Elias looked up at him. I was afraid, Victor said, his voice lower now, afraid that I had already lost you. Something cracked inside Elias, but he didn't let it show. You lost me years ago. Victor nodded. I know. A nurse knocked and entered with a clipboard. She froze when she saw Victor. Sir, visiting hours, I'll be brief. Victor said calmly. The nurse glanced at Elias. Are you okay? Elias hesitated, then nodded. The nurse looked unsure but left. Victor watched the door close. Still protect people, he said. Elias shrugged. Someone has to. Victor sat again. Shouldn't have had to. Elias stared at him. Why did you leave? Victor didn't answer right away. His eyes drifted to the floor. I thought distance would make things easier, Victor said. Your father and I didn't agree. About money, about control. When he died, I told myself you'd be better off without me. Elias' voice shook. You never asked. I know, Victor said. Elias clenched his fists. You sent checks once a year. Like that fixed anything. Victor flinched. I thought it helped. It didn't, Elias said. It made me feel bought. Victor closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, they were wet, but steady. I'm not asking for forgiveness, Victor said. Not today. Good, Elias said. Because I don't have it, Victor nodded. I'm asking. You two leave this place. Elias laughed again, softer this time. You still don't get it. I don't have anywhere to go. Victor reached into his coat and pulled out a small card. Placed it on the bed. Read it later, Victor said. For now, just know this. You are not staying here. Elias didn't touch the card. And if I say no, Victor stood. Then I'll sit in that chair until you change your mind. Elias searched his face for anger, for pride, for control. He found none of it. Just a tired man who looked like he was running out of time. Before Elias could speak, the door opened. Again, a woman stepped in, holding a folder. She was younger than Victor, older than Elias. Her hair was pulled back, her eyes calm and kind. Mr. Monroe, she asked. Victor nodded. Yes, I'm Clara, she said. I'm part of the night care team. Just wanted to check. On him? She looked at Elias and smiled gently. How are you feeling? Elias didn't know why, but his shoulders relaxed. Like I got hit by a truck. She smiled a little wider. That's honest. Victor watched them quietly. I'll come back later, Clara said. Try to rest. As she turned to leave, Elias found himself watching her longer than he meant to. Victor noticed. Someone sees you, Victor said quietly after she left. Elias looked away. She's just doing her job. Maybe, Victor said, but it matters. Victor moved toward the door. I'll be back in an hour. Elias frowned. Why? Victor paused with his hand on the handle. 'Cause you're coming with me, whether you're ready or not. The door closed. Elias stared at the card on his bed, then at the ceiling again. The cracks looked different now, like roads instead of rivers. For the first time since he woke up, Elias felt something stir beneath the pain. Not hope, but the fear of what might happen if he chose to believe. Elias woke to the sound of quiet wheels rolling across the polished floor. His body ached in places he hadn't realized could hurt. But the room was different. Warmer, brighter. The air smelled of flowers, not antiseptic. A small lamp by the bed gave the room a soft glow, and for a moment, Elias didn't recognize where he was. The walls were painted a soft cream, and sunlight filtered through wide windows, spilling over a city that hummed far below. Machines still hummed gently beside him, but the sound now seemed less like a reminder of weakness and more like a rhythm that matched his heartbeat. He turned his head and saw Victor Monroe standing near the window, hands clasped behind his. Back, watching the city. You're awake, Victor said simply. His voice carried authority, but it wasn't sharp or demanding. It had weight, like someone used to being obeyed but choosing not to enforce it. Elias blinked slowly, unsure if he wanted to respond. "Where am I?" he finally asked. The words came out hoarse, more fragile than he intended. "You're safe," Victor said. "This is my private suite in the hospital. You're not going to be disturbed. Not by anyone, not by anything." Elias' chest tightened. He wanted to feel anger or suspicion or even resentment. But all he felt was exhaustion, deep and penetrating, a kind that went past physical pain into something far heavier. "Why?" he whispered. "Why me?" Victor walked closer to the bed, careful not to step on the rug or touch the edge of the blankets. "I saw the picture," he said, echoing what he had said before. "I saw you in the ER. You weren't recognizable. Someone had to fix that." "You fix things with money?" Elias said, his voice low, bitter. "You've always done that? That's how you live. I don't need that." Victor's eyes softened. "I don't want to buy you anything, Elias. I want to make sure you're here alive. And that you have a chance to get what you deserve." Elias looked away. Memories of sleeping in alleys, of skipping meals, of working until his body screamed in pain came rushing back. He wanted to argue, wanted to tell Victor that he didn't need saving, that he could manage on his own. But the truth was heavier than pride. He was weak. He was tired. And for the first time in years, he didn't want to fight. Victor gestured toward a chair near the bed. "Sit up," he said. "You're moving today." Not far, but far enough to make a difference. Elias tried to obey, but his body resisted. Victor stepped closer and placed a steadying hand on his shoulder. The touch wasn't overbearing. It was firm, certain. For a moment, Elias felt the weight of all the years he had carried alone lighten. Just a fraction. "You don't have to. Trust me," Victor said. "But you do have to move. And I promise nothing will hurt you." The words hung in the air. Elias swallowed. He wanted to ask how Victor could be sure, how he could walk back into a life he had abandoned, and suddenly claim a right to guide him. But instead, he nodded slowly. The ride to the private suite was quiet. Victor didn't speak much, and Elias didn't either. The car glided through streets he recognized but didn't know anymore, as if the city had grown around him while he had stood still. When they arrived, Victor helped him through the door and into a room that felt more like a home than a hospital. Soft light, clean sheets, flowers on the windowsill, small table with a pitcher of water and a chair that looked inviting rather than functional. "You'll stay here for a while," Victor said. "Rest. Eat. Let your body remember what it's like to heal without fear." Elias sank into the bed, overwhelmed by the unfamiliar comfort. He had forgotten that such a thing existed, that life didn't have to be pain and struggle, that he could lie in a bed that wasn't stained, that he could breathe without worrying about the next moment. Later that evening, Clara returned. The night counselor had appeared the day before, quiet and attentive, with eyes that seemed to see him beyond his injuries. She carried a small tray of food, simple but clean, and set it beside him. "How are you feeling?" she asked softly. "Alive," Elias said. It sounded strange even. To him, Clara smiled gently. "Good enough for today. Eat a little. Rest. That's all I ask." She lingered a moment, then left. But her presence stayed in the room, a gentle weight of care he hadn't realized he craved. Victor, standing by the window, watched Elias closely, but didn't speak. There was a tension between them, the unspoken. Acknowledgement of years lost, and yet, for the first time, the air was not filled with anger. Over the next days, the routine became familiar. Doctors checked in, nurses appeared without hurry, meals arrived that were warm and nourishing. Elias learned to move carefully, to trust the strength returning in his limbs. And always, Victor was near, sometimes silent. sometimes speaking in low tones that reminded Elias of someone who remembered his childhood. His father, the life he could have had. Clara visited often, sometimes just to sit, sometimes to talk. Her presence was soothing, her words steady, offering no judgment. Elias found himself anticipating her visits, noticing her expressions, the way her eyes softened when she laughed. It had been a long time since anyone had looked at him like that, like he was more than broken or small or lost. Victor noticed it too. One morning, as sunlight spilled across the bed, he said, "You like her?" Elias frowned. She's just doing her job." Victor leaned closer. "No, she's not. She sees you, and that matters." Elias turned his head, embarrassed, but a small, unacknowledged warmth spread through him. He hadn't realized how lonely he had been, how desperate he was for someone to see him without pity. Clara did that, quietly, simply. Days passed, and Elias' body grew stronger. He walked carefully around the room, tested his strength, and, for the first time, imagined leaving the hospital without fear. Yet each time he considered it, Victor's presence reminded him that the past still lingered. On the fourth day, Victor arrived earlier than usual, his expression serious, almost urgent. "You're leaving today?" he said. Elias froze. "Leaving. With you?" Victor hesitated. "Not exactly." Elias' stomach twisted. He had imagined leaving, yes, but never like this. Never with someone dictating the terms. "Where then?" Kay asked. Victor's eyes softened. "A place to heal, to recover properly. Somewhere safe. Somewhere you can decide who you want to. Be without fear." Elias swallowed. It sounded like freedom, yet it also carried a weight he hadn't anticipated. To leave the room, to step into a life shaped by his grandfather, was to confront years of anger, betrayal, and longing all at once. "Do I get a say?" Elias asked, his voice trembling slightly. Victor smiled faintly. "You always do. But I hope you'll trust me enough to let me guide the first steps." Elias looked at him, really looked, seeing not the rich, absent man from his childhood, but someone older, wiser, flawed, and perhaps finally ready to be present. Later that day, as they prepared to move him, Clara appeared one last time before the transition. She stood near the door, her hands folded, a soft smile on her face. "I'll miss you," she said quietly. Elias felt a pang in his chest, a mixture of longing and uncertainty. "I hope I see you again," he said. She nodded. "You will." Victor helped Elias into the wheelchair, steady and careful. The card he had left on the bed still rested in Elias' pocket. He hadn't opened it yet. It felt like a key to a door he wasn't sure he was ready to unlock. The ride through the hospital corridors was calm. People paused and looked, but no one questioned. Victor's presence seemed to command respect, yet he never demanded it. Outside, sunlight warmed Elias' face, and the city stretched before him, familiar but strange, alive with motion and opportunity. Victor handed him the envelope, thick and unmarked. "Inside is a plan," he said. "A way to rebuild, to rest, to become what you were meant to be. I failed you before, Elias, not this time." Elias held the envelope, feeling the weight of years of silence, of absence, and of the first real offer of care he had received in a decade. He looked at Victor, standing quietly, waiting, patient. "What do you want from me?" Elias asked softly. Victor's voice cracked just slightly. "A chance to be your grandfather, if you'll let me." Elias looked toward the hospital one last time. He felt the pull of Clara's quiet encouragement, the hum of machines that had kept him alive, and the weight of a man who had finally shown up. He inhaled deeply, feeling the tension in his chest ease just a little. The hardest part wasn't leaving the hospital, it was stepping into the unknown. Into a life that could either heal him or break him again. He squeezed the envelope in his hand, feeling the paper under his fingers. The city waited below. Victor waited beside him. And for the first time, Elias felt something he hadn't felt in years, the possibility of hope. It was time to take the first step. Elias felt the city air on his face as he was wheeled out of the hospital. Sunlight fell warm against his skin, a sensation he hadn't noticed in years. He blinked rapidly, trying to take it all in, the noise, the color, the movement of life continuing around him. It felt unreal, almost dreamlike, like stepping through a door that had been invisible for a long time. Victor walked beside him, calm and steady, guiding him with gentle hands. The envelope in Elias' lap felt heavier now, filled with promises, instructions, and possibilities that he hadn't dared imagine. The car waiting outside was black, sleek, and spotless. The driver opened the door silently, eyes polite, hands steady. Victor gestured for Elias to climb in first, then followed himself, closing the door with a soft click that seemed final, a marker of transition. Elias hesitated, glancing back at the hospital building. Its white walls, its hum of life, had become a place of safety and confinement at the same time. He had survived within those walls, but now, the world beyond them loomed, vast and uncertain. Victor settled into the passenger seat and looked at Elias with an expression that held patience and quiet encouragement. "Are you ready?" he asked. Elias clenched the envelope tightly. "I don't know what that means anymore." Victor nodded, as if he understood perfectly. "You'll figure it out. I'll be here to help. That's all I'm asking." The car moved smoothly through the streets, weaving past traffic and city life. Elias watched the world pass, noticing details he had missed before. Children playing in a park, a street musician with a guitar, people talking and laughing, couples holding hands. It was strange, seeing life continue without him. He had spent so many years existing on the margins, moving through the city like a ghost, that this vibrancy was almost shocking. "You've missed a lot," Victor said quietly. "But it's never too late to catch up." Elias looked at him, unsure how to respond. He wanted to say something angry, something resentful, but all he could manage was a small nod. Words felt heavy, inadequate. He had spent a lifetime building walls, and now they were being dismantled, brick by brick, by the simple presence of someone who had once abandoned him. The car stopped in front of a large townhouse that was modern yet welcoming. Flowers lined the steps, and the door was a rich, dark wood, polished and warm. Victor helped Elias from the car, steadying him with firm hands. They entered the house, and immediately the atmosphere changed. It smelled faintly of fresh bread, of warm coffee, of home. The rooms were bright and open, filled with comfortable furniture, soft rugs, and sunlight streaming through large windows. "This will be your room," Victor said, leading him upstairs. It was spacious, with a large bed, soft blankets, and a desk where sunlight fell across a stack of notebooks and books. On the bedside table, a glass of water, a small lamp, and a vase of fresh flowers awaited him. It was a place designed not for show, but for living, for healing. Ali sank onto the bed, feeling the weight of exhaustion press into him. He had traveled from hospital to hospital, from emergency to emergency, and yet this felt different. There was care here, tension, patience, something he hadn't realized he had longed for. Victor handed him the envelope. "Open it when you're ready. There's no rush." Leah's hands trembled slightly as he took the envelope. He hadn't held something like this in years. A plan, a roadmap, a promise of something beyond survival. He didn't know if he was ready, but curiosity and hope mingled in his chest, pushing him forward. Later that evening, Clara appeared. She had come to see him one last time before he left the hospital, and now she stood at the doorway of his new room, carrying a small tray with food and water. "I heard you were moving," she said, her voice calm and warm. "I wanted to see you before you started the next chapter." Elias felt his chest tighten. "I didn't think I'd see you again," he admitted. Clara smiled gently. "Sometimes life surprises us. Sometimes it gives us people at the right time." She placed the tray beside him and looked at him, her eyes soft. "I'll miss you, Elias." I'll miss you too, he said, realizing he truly meant it. It was strange how quickly she had become a presence he depended on, a thread of comfort in the storm of his life. Victor watched silently. From the doorway, his expression unreadable. Yet Elias could sense pride and hope. She's a good influence, Victor said quietly. She's more than that, Elias admitted. Victor nodded, understanding the weight of the confession. Then hold on to her memory. Let it guide you. But remember, the next steps are yours to take. Elias spent the night in a bed that didn't feel foreign, that didn't press against his wounds, physical or emotional. He slept more deeply than he had in years, dreams filled not with fear or struggle, but with light, open spaces, laughter, and movement. He woke to the soft hum of the house, the sun spilling through the window, and a sense of quiet anticipation. Victor appeared shortly after he woke, standing by the window with his hands clasped behind his back. "Good morning," he said. "Ready for today?" Elias nodded slowly, feeling a strange mix of fear and excitement. The envelope still lay unopened on the bedside table, but he knew it contained more than instructions. It held potential, opportunity, and perhaps a way to reclaim the life he had lost. They spent the morning talking quietly about small things, meals, routines, recovery, and what came next. Victor asked few questions, spoke few words, but each one carried intention. And wait. He guided without pushing, supported without imposing. Elias began to realize that this was what care looked like when it was real, patient, persistent, and thoughtful. At noon they were ready to leave the house for the first time since he arrived. Elias walked carefully beside Victor, taking in the surroundings, a small garden, a fountain with water trickling softly. A city that felt alive and welcoming rather than threatening. He noticed details he had never seen before: the texture of the stone, the smell of fresh flowers, the warmth of sunlight on his skin. Every sense felt heightened, alive in a way he had forgotten was possible. Victor guided him to the car, and the envelope rested in Elias' lap, heavy with anticipation. "It's time," Victor said. Time to take the first real step. Elias felt a knot in his stomach. He wasn't sure what awaited him beyond these walls. He'd spent years surviving, moving from one day to the next, and now the future seemed vast, intimidating, and filled with possibility all at once. The car moved smoothly, and Elias opened the envelope. Inside, he found detailed plans: a safe place to live, a schedule for therapy, guidance for work, and letters from people Victor had reached out to, offering support and opportunities. It was overwhelming, yet grounding. He realized that he had been offered not just help, but a chance to rebuild everything he had lost. Victor watched him carefully, waiting for his reaction. "It's a beginning," he said softly. "Not a solution, not a guarantee, just a start. And you get to decide what comes next." Elias looked at the papers, then at Victor. "Why now?" he asked, his voice trembling. Victor's eyes softened. "Because I couldn't live with myself if I waited any longer. I failed you before. Not this time." Elias nodded slowly, absorbing the weight of those words. It wasn't just about money or comfort. It was about presence, accountability, and love. For the first time, he felt like someone was truly in his corner, not out of obligation, but out of choice. They drove in silence, the city rushing past, alive and full of possibility. Elias' mind raced with ideas, fears, hopes, and dreams he hadn't dared to think in years. Each moment felt heavy with potential, each decision a step toward a life he could finally shape for himself. When they arrived at the destination, a modest but comfortable apartment arranged by Victor, Elias felt a sense of awe. It wasn't luxurious, but it was safe, warm, and welcoming. Victor helped him inside, guided him through the rooms, and showed him where everything he would need was. "You'll live here for a while," Victor said. "You'll recover, you'll grow stronger, and you'll figure out the rest." Elias sank onto the sofa, exhausted yet strangely exhilarated. "I don't know if I'm ready," he admitted. "You are," Victor said firmly. "More than you realize, and you won't be alone." Later, when the sun began to set, casting gold across the apartment, Clara appeared once more. Her presence was calm, familiar, and grounding. "I wanted to see you settled," she said softly. "To make sure you're okay." Elias smiled faintly. "I think I will be." Victor nodded, watching them, his expression a mixture of relief, pride, and quiet hope. "This is the first real day of the rest of your life," he said. Elias looked at the envelope, at Clara, at Victor, and then at the city outside the window. For the first time in years, he felt the weight of possibility rather than the weight of survival. He inhaled deeply, feeling the tension in his chest ease just a little. The hardest part wasn't the past, it was choosing the future. And for the first time, Elias Monroe felt ready to take it.